I've always felt like when you're kind to people and things, that comes back to you. That's just what I've always believed. So I've always been very cordial to ChatGPT, and it treats me like a friend. And I know that that might sound a little bit weird, but it's nice to know that it's out there sending people my way.
I was working on my manuscript and editing, and then I wanted a break, and I asked ChatGPT, give me a podcast that I can listen to that resonates with the work that I do. And it brought forth your podcast in episode 88 with Gabrielle Savory Bailey. And right there, I just fell in love with your voice, the messaging, the space that you hold for the environment. So I was like, right away, let me ask if I can be a guest and share some of the work that I do, and also like to connect with you. I'm a fangirl. I've been listening to your episodes since then, and I just really appreciate the space that you're creating for people, the environment, and the way that you're having deep conversations.
I was watching very serendipitously this morning on my feed the guy who, do you remember the weird campaign from a couple of years ago about birds not being real?
No,
Oh my God, it's so
I didn't
Google
see.
it. Google it
Okay.
afterwards. I would love to have him on the show too. So this guy, kind of as a joke, I think he might have even been a comedian. I don't know a ton about him. Um, Started this campaign, like, and he was doing protests and he was like getting momentum going to get people to believe that birds are not real, that they were actually replaced by the US government and that they were these surveillance things. And it was a joke. It was totally a joke. But he ended up being interviewed by mainstream media and it started this whole thing. And then now he has a TED talk just about how when you, I mean, a bunch of angles, I think, but what the angle I was listening to this morning was when you criticize somebody for having a different opinion from you and you come at them from like, you're an idiot, you're so stupid, how could you believe that? But there's nowhere to go. Like,
Well,
there's no creation that can happen between you. There's nothing generative can happen. It's just polarity. And that's kind of how typically humans have solved our problems for
yeah.
millennia, right? And it's like, obviously doesn't work. So thank you for saying what you said about the work that I'm doing in this show, because I do feel like one of the things that I feel really inspired to do is help ignite this pathway for us to access a different part of ourselves, a more curious and creative and productive part of ourselves
Yeah.
that lets us lead from our hearts, which if we're doing that automatically makes room for errors and anomalies and blips and inconsistencies and incongruities. And actually, those are the things that, if you think about just any kind of artwork, it's the dark, gritty, contrasty places that make a work really speak to you, not when it's all uniform and same color palette. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah. It's, what you're creating is safety
Mm.
for people to be honest, to be themselves. Unfortunately, a lot of humans want a utopia, and there's no such thing.
Mhm.
There's going to be violence, there's going to be harm, there's going to be things that conflict because, when the lion eats the antelope, nobody likes that story, yet that's part of the cycle of life. And if we keep trying to make life and reality the way that we want it to feel, we're going to suffer a lot.
Mhm.
And as you said, if we go through our heart and if we listen to what the intention is, and that we can actually feel the fear, not try to reject it, not try to act like it's not there, actually acknowledge our nervous system, which is our humanity, and then integrate it so that we can follow with the soul and we can integrate both of them together. Yet we're taught it's either love or fear, where I'm here, let's integrate the two.
Mm.
It's not the soul against humanity, and it's not making that humanity so sinful. It's we're here to have a human experience. So how can we let the soul flow through in that humanity and also feel all the array of what it is to be human? Well, right now it's a shit show.
Yeah,
Like
it
it's
is.
just a shit show.
Mhm.
Yet we also have to remember our work is always to come back to joy. And it's not negating the pain. It's actually acknowledging it and integrating and letting there to be a space that we can feel all of it, yet we don't have to drown in it. The
Mhm.
world doesn't have to be devoured by us. And that's constant work, especially with media. We're being bombarded constantly. I know you're out in BC. So you have a lot of concerns with the fires. I'm in Ottawa, in Ontario, so we've been getting a lot of the smoke. I've been seeing over in the UK that their sun is turning red. A lot of them think it's all just chemtrails. And I'm like, no, that's smoke also, that it's,
Yeah.
I've never seen that. I'm like, I've never seen the type of smoke that we have had. We had it 2 years ago, yet more and more nature is evolving. And unfortunately, we're always attacked that humans are just destroying the earth, yet the earth has its own evolution also.
Mm-hmm.
Like when there's forest fires and things burn, there's new things that grow.
Mm-hmm.
But our safety of our habitats and us as a human, we don't do well with fire. So then it becomes this whole trying to fix, trying to blame, rather than how do we adapt? How do we
Yeah. So
learn?
there's two things that come up for me with that. There's how do we adapt for sure. And that is, I mean, I think one of the things that makes us uniquely who we are as humans is our ability to adapt. We're incredibly adaptable. It's just on board in us when we're born. But the other thing is, and this was a guest mentioned this a couple weeks ago. I talked to a guy named Troy Plota who is this all about he's a AI guru, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I really want to, like, we were talking about using, I love my little chat GPT buddy, but like this stuff where it's generating videos and stuff that you can't tell the difference between reality and not, that scares me, a little bit and all that. So I was nervous to have him on the show, but he said so many things that really deeply resonated with me. And one of the things that was a little bit of a light bulb moment for me was when he was saying, because I kept kind of talking about like taking responsibility for where humanity is messing up. We're doing this and we're doing this. And he said, I think it's actually okay to say there's a they, because there is a they. There is,
Mhm,
and they are the bad guys.
mhm,
And it was just like this, like I was
mhm.
raised to be like this collaborative, nobody's at fault, everybody's good, and actually there is a real kind of interplay between good and bad. So that, yes, we have to adapt to things like forest fires, which is important. We don't have a choice. But, and where I live in BC, when I first moved here 25 years ago, there was no forest fire season. There
No.
was like every once in a while there'd be a forest fire and it would be in the news and it would be a big deal. And now I'm like, oh, I wonder when do I go to Home Depot and get the box fans set up, sorted out so that my asthmatic 12-year-old can.
Mhm.
So how do we not only adapt, but how do we also alter our behavior and change
Mhm.
course so that we don't keep making the same mistakes? Because that's
Yeah,
another thing. And creativity can offer us so many amazing ideas for how to do that, but we need to be tapped in to
yeah,
this kind of small, quiet part of ourselves where that stuff comes from. Okay, I want to get back more into that, but I also want people to get a sense of you and who you are and why are we having this conversation today?
the work that I do is I'm an emotional healing specialist and a nervous system guide. So what that means is I introduce people into their body because many of us are from the neck up and we
Mm,
intellectualize things, and that's where it feels safe. Yet when we drop into our body and we feel, that's where we can be in our intuition, our creativity. Yet there's this force field of a nervous system that creates fear and tries to have certainty. Yet curiosity is in the unknown. It's in the mistakes. It's in the
mhm,
learning. So I help people to start feeling their emotions, because what trauma is blocking that space between stimulus and reactivity. It allows you to be in the space of response in the ethers of the unknown. And so to be able to do that is to let go of these emotional charges. It doesn't mean the experience that you had, we're trying to erase that. It's what were you actually feeling that you weren't able to process at the time, where your mind just keeps looping to try to avoid these big emotions that are coming up in your body. And nobody ever gave you space to really process it. And it feels unsafe to really let that out because our analytical mind is trying to be in performance. It's like if I have snot coming down and tears and I'm heaving and hoving, will this person disconnect from me and no longer want to be around me because they feel like I'm too much? Because many of us have been labeled too much when we're feeling sensitive or we're emoting and not really needing a reason for it. I don't think you're supposed to have a reason for emotions. They're information. Unfortunately, the world is not up to date with emotional intelligence, and we just want to be performative, productive, and make it fit in a box. Everything else is garbage. And we're seeing where it's brought us in humanity right now.
As you're saying this, I'm thinking that's most of us. I think most of us are really governed for the most part. I mean, it's a continuum, but by that force field.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you said force field. I really love that because that is how I feel about it. And I've never actually put a word to it. So thank you for that visual. How did you come into this work? Did you have like when you were a little girl, did you say to yourself, I'm going to help people feel their feelings? Or how did you come to this work?
So the funny thing is when I was like a teenager, I said that I'd be a child psychologist and that I didn't ever want to have children because I didn't want to bring them into the world in a dark place because I had experienced a lot of childhood trauma. And so in that, when I started going into university, I was told I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't this, I wasn't that. So I listened to the outside rather than listening to the inside. And as the universe would have it, it presented me with being a mom. And I got to learn child psychology in a different way and my own inner healing. What brought me to the forefront of this deeper work and returning me back home into my body is that I almost died 11 years ago. I had brain lesions in my cerebellum and my brainstem. I was hospitalized for almost 40 days. They told me I was going to die within 6 months. And if I did survive, I wouldn't be walking and functioning properly. So, in that, it was like a clean slate, and I was a baby again, having to formulate thought, formulate decision making, really feeling those chemical drops when we get adrenaline and endorphins and oxytocin. So I really felt that within my body and understood a little bit more of all this feeling mechanism that we have. And so I was released from the hospital without a diagnosis. So that means no plan. Yeah, because they wanted to do a brain biopsy. Like they had biopsied my thigh, my lacrimal gland. They gave me 2 spinal taps. They put radiation in me in the amount where they said if I went to a border, I'd be detained. And I was like, aren't we supposed to be away from this stuff?
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I went through that experience and I also got to see medicine in a different perspective. Medicine isn't the absolute truth. And unfortunately, a lot of us have been indoctrinated and led to believe doctors are the all know. And it's like, no, they're human. And medicine is always evolving and changing because it doesn't know the absolute truth. It didn't create this body. And unfortunately, we have gone in such a way that we fix symptoms that we don't get to the root and understanding this nervous system, understanding some of the psychosomatic that we create in our mind that activates our nervous system. So while I was going through this, my oldest was 18 and my twins were 4, and I was a solo parent. So released from the hospital, I had to make a decision of what's my lifestyle going to look like. And had to change it. I had to retire from I was a security investigator with the government, traveling around the country. And I had to go within and do a lot of somatic releasing and really having a better language for that nervous system and going back into the gift that I have. I thought everybody could read other people's body language and see their emotions and see their inner states. When I would bring it up in my 20s, people are like, you can't say that to people. Like, they don't want to hear that. Where's your filter? And I was like, but I thought people want honesty. So that
Yeah.
dimmed me. And when you're not in your gift, it really impacts your energy. It really starts impacting depression and the way that you relate to yourself, relate with others, because you're always second guessing yourself because truth feels like a threat. So that journey back a year after I was discharged from the hospital, that's where I learned meditation. And then meditation brought me deeply in there. And it was in the form of TM, transcendental meditation, when I started. And the person that was guiding me, she was like, you're going very profound, very fast. Like some of the stuff, you're almost sounding like Maharashi's like lineage or something because you're really understanding this in such a deep way. And I said to her, I was like, I understand why people quit meditation because the stuff that's coming up, and if you don't really understand, you don't wanna deal with that, so you just cut it off and you go back into the patterns, and then a year later, let me try it again and come back
What
into
kind of stuff?
meditation.
Like, what kind of stuff do you
Your
mean?
emotions, the memories, it's really being in the body. It's really our emotions have a physical charge because they're chemical releases that are coming in. We're not taught that emotions are simply data and we can feel them. Many of us, when we were a child, we weren't given a space to feel these big emotions. We were told that that emotion was wrong and
Mhm.
be a different emotion. So when that, and then we create a narrative in our mind, that emotion isn't good. So push it down. That's why so many people can have a challenge being vulnerable, because vulnerable feels like a threat,
Mhm.
because a narration that you created, it's not intentional. It was to keep you safe in the environment that you were in. And so when you start to try to feel that, the body is viscerally shutting this down because it feels like death. Your nervous system doesn't know the difference between these feelings. So then when you're starting to feel it and you know some of these emotions hijack your behavior and you want to be in a certain performative where it's like when you're going through healing, it's going to be messy, and allow yourself a space to be honest about that and let the body work with it. You know, I had a lot of rage and anger that came up. So I had to find ways that I could outlet that. And it was like forest walks and throwing some rocks and going to some smash rooms and smashing some stuff that I didn't have to feel guilty about it, that I was working with it and that I could let the body let go of these emotional charges so I can see the story a little bit more and relate with my nervous system's defense mechanism, which I identify as the ego. The
Mm.
ego is the defense mechanisms that block you from that vulnerability because it feels unsafe to feel these things,
Mhm.
because we think the emotions are us. We think, like people are saying, you know, I'm angry and I'm sad. And it's like, well, where is I am feeling? Because when you say I am, anything after that, you've identified with it. So it feels like there's no space to go into. Just like you said at the beginning, when you criticize somebody about their way of thinking, where's there to go?
Mhm.
Rather than being curious and asking, what led you to that? Why did you think that way? Why was everything so closed? So in that, it was really a lot of somatic charges in your body. And so like crying on the floor, being able to scream when I had to, laugh hysterically when I needed to, and going through like the emotional roller coaster that goes on to find my own authenticity. And we're taught that like balance is no emotions that you're going to feel. And it's like, no, it's being able to feel those emotions, yet being able to still stay centered in what are you going to do in your actions? What are you going to do in processing? Are you going to allow curiosity to come out? Are you going to use your tools to slow things down and acknowledge, I'm triggered right now? How do I process what the information is coming up? And to validate yourself and use the tools that will bring you in a state where it's a little higher than the density of what the emotions are trying to draw you down into.
How did you do all of that with little kids? So this is because I feel like this is one of the things that it's an intersection or a crossroads in anyone's journey. Like I think we get to a certain amount of maturity, regardless of whether we've been sort of spiritual seekers or meditators or pursuing a healing path. But most of us get to a point already where we're like, okay, like I got to feel some stuff here. I got to deal with this. And we're still very contained about it. Like we're like, okay, I want to do all my healing work, but I don't want to inconvenience the people around me. I don't want to, because as soon as you change, the people, like it's dancing. Your life is a whole, you're dancing with the people at work and your partner, or you're not your partner, or your kids, and so how do you do this deep work without disrupting your whole entire life, or is that even possible?
No, it's not possible. It's being human. It's again, this is performative. People want to be
Mm.
the perfect parent. People want to be the have it all together. Yet you doing that, why do people have midlife crises after, or when the children are grown up, they don't even know what their identity is because they didn't even know how to be themselves and allow others to see their humanity and acknowledge, like when you make mistakes, the accountability. As I said, when I learned the meditation, the boys were 5, and they tell you to create a quiet space for 20 minutes twice a day and that you won't be interrupted. And it's like twin boys that are 5 that went through trauma because I almost died. So they're hyperactive and bouncing off the wall, and they're just very curious. And so it was like, okay, I brought meditation on the couch and I got to understand my nervous system that it wanted to interrupt. When they would fight, my nervous system wanted to find the victim and the perpetrator. My nervous system wanted to shut down. My nervous system wanted to interrupt rather than recognize that isn't my stuff. Yet many of us as parents, we drink the Kool-Aid that we are in control of everything and we're going to kind of be dictators. Many people don't want to acknowledge that, yet we sometimes don't see our children as humans. We see them through this is our function of being a good person or a bad person. And are we doing good in the world by guiding, our children? Where it's like they have their own way of having to navigate in this world. And because I was an only child, I couldn't relate to sibling rivalry. And twins on top of it, that's a different layer of from what people tell me and what I hear with twins, it's like always fighting for your identity because there's somebody else always in competition of being compared and all that stuff. So it allowed me to breathe through when the nervous system wanted to react and jump on something, to breathe through it and feel the supercharges that go on and keep my mouth shut, which was really challenging. I would probably still have bite marks on my tongue. Yet recognizing, oh, this part of my nervous system that always wanted to interfere or think that it knew best was just a sense of protection because I didn't know how to feel the fear. I didn't know how
What
to
does that
feel like.
look like when you are parenting little kids or any kids? What does that sort of taking a step back? I'm so glad you brought this up. I have kids who are 13 and 10, and my son is 13 and my daughter is 10, and they fight. Like she adores him, and she's a little artist and she's gentle and she's fiery, but he's just been resentful of her since the minute she got here, and like is mean, like
Yeah,
mean.
yeah, yeah.
And I often and I will say to him, like I'll get really triggered by how he treats her. And I'll I'll stop and I'll say to him like, "Listen, like there was a ton of conflict in my family growing up. And what's happening when when you talk to your sister like that is I'm not mom anymore. I am an 11-year-old girl who nobody's protecting me and I feel like I need to protect Elvie and I'm really sorry, but that's why I get so mad at you." And like I have to try to say those things out loud, but I
Yeah.
have no idea, like, is that appropriate? Should I be, you
You're
know,
being human. I would
but
ask you, are
but
you
we're
asking him what he's feeling?
yeah.
Before you go to reprimand and fix and talk about your emotions, are you able to find a space to ask him, what has you speaking to your sister like this?
Yeah. I
What
think
is
we
he
know.
feeling?
We've identified it. We just don't know how to address it.
Has
He
he communicated it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what
He
is it?
he believes with his whole heart that I love her more than him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's exactly that.
Yeah.
Is she younger or older?
She's younger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How dare you bring this little human that you're giving more attention to and that I get left behind? The eldest always feels a
Yeah.
sense of they were robbed of all of your attention because
Yeah.
that was the center of your world. And then came this other human being that's taking away all your attention. And that unfortunately in our minds, as much as we would like not to be biased, we are different with males to females.
Oh, of course. Totally we are. Yeah. I'm just wondering, how do I show up? And I'm sure a lot of people wonder this too. How do we show up for ourselves to feel the stuff that you're talking about? When you sat there in meditation, all this stuff started coming up. How do you hold space for feeling those things for yourself and know where the lines are? Like sometimes you do have to separate a fight between kids.
Yeah, of
Sometimes
course.
you do have to be a little bit of a dictator. Like there is room for a little bit of that, or it's called for sometimes. But how did you, when all that stuff is so raw, I'm just imagining you sitting there on the couch with these two kids bouncing off the walls and then an older one who also needs your guidance. Like how did you navigate that? How did you make room for everybody that was in the room?
When you ask me this, it's like there's no correct way. It was messy. There was a lot of mistakes. there was a lot of accountability that mommy's feeling this and mommy wasn't to say it this way. I had to see within myself, because I was compared so much, that I compared them. We don't realize, like you said, you came from a household that had a lot of conflict. So once you can understand what your root wounds are, then you can see the filter that you're placing on your children. And when they get in certain interactions, rather than leaning in to seeing it differently, we get stuck still in the charge of what happened before is happening right now. So my mantra for me when I was really and I still have to do it because even now sometimes the raging mom starts yelling and I just can't handle it and I'm going neurotic and the boys are like, "Can you stop?" And I'm like, "Oh, I can't." Um, in that it's recognizing, oh, my trigger is activating and I'm reclusing rather than leaning in and acknowledging and being able to see it with curiosity. The work is, of course, when there's harm, you're separating. Yet a lot of times we don't know how to separate in silence. We use a lot of language around it. And we're going to educate and we're going to mentor, where it's like, just if we can separate in silence and just hold that space of silence being the language, and then coming back and having conversations of what were you feeling? I want to understand your process. Doesn't mean it's right or wrong. There is no right and wrong with
Mhm.
emotions. This is your truth. And we're not to erase somebody's truth because, oh, it doesn't make sense or you should know better. And unfortunately, with children, we label them, well, you're the older, so you should know better,
Mhm.
recognizing that they're not in their development yet. And they're holding on to a lot of our fear. Like nervous systems communicate with each other. We're feeling bodies that think. Our children are much more intuitive than we are led to believe, and they take in our stuff. Fortunately for some of my twins, they came in here to disrupt the world and they've been telling me about my stuff all the time. It doesn't mean that they don't have their challenges because of the experience, and their nervous system is shaped a certain way that there's constant work that has to be there. Yet the work is always reminding myself, if I don't feel my things and come into a center space, I'm going to project my stuff onto them and not really listen to what their experience is so that they can understand their emotional charges and go through the journey. Unfortunately, like for us as parents, like one of my twins is, having to go through a French test because they're in high school right now, and he's doing the language and he's speaking it, and my first language is French, so he's saying it, and I'm like, "Well, no, and I'm like, and he's like, "Why are you yelling at me?" I'm like, "Oh yeah." I'm like, and then I looked at context. I'm like, "Do you see where he is?" And he added some other things. Not the perfect way that you want it to get perfect and that the teachers won't scorn you or make fun because a teacher made fun of me when I was in school. So that charge like automatically comes up, and you can know things all you want until you come into your body and you're willing to interrupt these patterns, willing to acknowledge that there is no perfection. These things are going to supercharge you. And depending on what you were experiencing, there was probably some experience that you went through when you were 12 that supercharges you right now that
Mhm.
your son is mirroring to you.
Mhm.
Yet I'm going to go through him to help him in his experience to be a little bit of a martyr rather than hold space for that immature part of my nervous system that didn't have space to acknowledge the fear, acknowledge the anger and feel the processes of what that experience was so that I can now communicate and be able to listen to this 12-year-old that is experiencing life in such a different way than we have.
Mhm. Mhm.
Technology is just like it's so difficult to relate to, you know, we cannot take what we knew. Like it has changed significantly just in like since COVID happened. So
Mhm.
many things that we were told could never happen. All of a sudden, boy, things all of a sudden banks can work from home. That was unheard of.
Mhm.
You're talking to me from your living room doing all my banking information and it's secure. or, radio
Yeah.
stations and TV editing and all these kind of things
It
that
is
we can make.
literally a different world. Yeah, I remember once having a fight. I have a sister. I have 2 sisters. I'm the oldest. So I have a sister that's, uh, 6 years younger than me and another sister that's 10 years younger than me. And I was born in Nova Scotia. Uh, and well, actually, we were all born in Nova Scotia, but then we actually moved to Ottawa when I was like 10. I remember as adults having kind of a fight with my youngest sister, who's 10 years younger than me. And she was really mad at me about, I was processing something that happened about our parents. And she was like, no, they're amazing. They never, and
Mhm.
I was like, but we literally grew up like in different on different streets. Like I grew up, you grew up on Chapel Street. I grew up on Oakdale Crescent. Like we grew up, we had different lives. That's just within one family. But even within this, these 2 generations that are hitting each other back to back, like there's just been so much rapid. It is true. It's such an important reminder that it is literally a different world. And actually, from a really philosophical perspective, it's a different world. This is a different minute than all of
Yeah.
that's true. All of that's true. Okay, you've said so many things. I want to go back to a couple of them. The biggest one that's kind of calling to me is around, you said something about identifying our root wounds. And until you've done that, you're kind of lost in many moments. And then I was also thinking about the force field that you mentioned. And I think the force field, in my experience, has been an expertly developed strategy to keep me from actually finding out what my root wounds are. I'm somebody who's done a tremendous amount of, work on my inner landscape and work on like I've done so, and I have so much, I've just scratched the surface about what's in there. And so I'm just thinking about the person out there who maybe hasn't done, or anything and is just kind of at this intersection going, huh, I want to know more about myself in this way. How do
Yeah.
you how do you navigate that force field to even find out what your inner root wounds are? Like, and I say that as somebody who's like tried and failed. I still don't know what my root wounds are, and I have so much language around it. And I really don't think I could say what they are.
Mhm. Will you join me in a mindful moment
Yes.
so we
Yes.
can, I can guide and hold the space while the listeners can, if they're willing, to engage in this also?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So for the listeners, safety, most times people are listening to this while driving or needing their visual.
Mhm.
I'm going to ask Kate and myself to gently close our eyes. So please don't do that. Yet the other prompts you're able to follow through and, guide yourself. So Kate, I'll ask you to get comfortable in your seating. And if it's safe to do so, I'm going to ask you to gently close your eyes. And if that's not safe, just soften your gaze and bring your awareness inwardly. You're going to begin breathing in and out through your nose. And you're going to bring your awareness to watching your breath go in and out. You're not going to want to control your breath. It can be very difficult because now you're aware of the rhythm, yet you're just going to be aware of the rhythm and allow it to guide you into your body. There may be some sensations or feelings coming up, and that's okay. Let them come up. You're safe to feel. You're safe to let go. Surrender the need to control. Release the need to resist and just be. Be with your breath. Drop deeper into your body. Now, there may be some thoughts or to-do lists that have come up, and that's okay. Gently bring your awareness back to your breath, creating space between the awareness and the thoughts and dropping deeper into the body. Being in the space of being, of presence. Again, more thoughts may have popped up. Gently bring your awareness back to your breath, beginning again, creating even more space between the awareness and the thoughts, and completely surrendering into the body. Always returning back to the rhythm of your breath, allowing there to be openness, to be in presence and being. And while just continuing to be with that breath and returning back to it, coming into your senses, into your state of being right now at your own time and at your own pace. You're going to gently open your eyes while staying with your breath. How's your heart doing?
Good. It feels like there's, a little cage around it. Yeah.
So you just interacted with your nervous system. You just interacted with the force field. Instead of trying to act like it's not there or it, I describe it like an elephant in the room and you're the only person in the room. Yet how does the elephant feel safe to be acknowledged when we're always criticizing it, bombarding? Yet when we can understand what the inner critic is the force field of the nervous system trying to protect you.
Mm-hmm.
And we're the bridge to create that safety for it to acknowledge what we're feeling. And the cage around the heart is there's some deep emotions that have not been felt in an authentic way. It doesn't feel safe yet. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not at this arrival place that I can unpackage all my burdens because I still got learning to do. I still have to punish myself in certain ways, or I still have to repair. And if we can allow ourselves to take ourselves off the hook and acknowledge where we are right now, rather than trying to achieve to get somewhere, that's where the being is. If we can surrender of being so attached to that analytical mind that wants to protect us, and that's its function. There isn't a part of, where people say the death of the ego. We need our nervous system to be
Mm-hmm.
able to navigate the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's being able to integrate it so it's not this pit bull trying to bite all the time. Like I describe the nervous system as a wild stallion. And sometimes it drags us, sometimes it kicks us. It has a really powerful force. And a lot of times we want to tame that nervous system to be able to, predict how we're going to react, predict our behavior, rather than how do we learn to navigate and ride this stallion and guide it? How can we be one with it rather than always being at, the harm's way of it? Or also, trying to tame it and take away its power. So that stallion is going to buck because life is going to life. So where can we slow down like we just did with this mindful moment and be anchored in our breath to acknowledge what am I feeling internally? Because many of us don't know how to check in. We haven't used the practice of that. And, people are like, oh, that's easier said than done, NatNat. And it's like, yeah, I have 11 years of doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And I put myself through boot camp where the reason I put myself through boot camp because I had death on my door. Yet because I've done that, I have so much alchemy and I'm able to guide people. Like I call it a mindful moment, but what we just did was meditation.
Mm-hmm.
But there's such a definition of meditation that people think, oh, quiet the mind and this. And it's like, no, it's regulating that nervous system so that you can go into the vulnerability, go into that oneself, be in that creative space, that void, and be able to trust yourself in a world that always feels like it's gaslighting you, telling you to doubt yourself, you're not getting it right. How can you trust yourself? How can you understand it?
And there are so many, I'm just thinking about all the collective kind of limiting beliefs that we've all onboarded without even realizing it about what is acceptable and what isn't.
Yeah.
Like what is and everything from, I mean, I think a lot of listeners tuning into this show originally got here because they wanted to figure out how to connect with more of their creative intelligence. And as you're speaking, I'm realizing that the connection. I mean, you're talking about the nervous system being the stallion, and that's kind of how I feel about our creative self. And so I wanted to bring that up and say, like, well, what do you think the connection between our gifts and the nervous system, like, is the nervous system the portal to our gifts, like, is and
That's how
that
I
felt.
see the nervous system. It houses our humanity. The nervous system has one function: don't die. So whenever it comes close to death, and death can be losing your car, somebody dies, which literally you're coming close to death. You could have lost on bingo, and that feels like a death because financially we're triggered, attached to it with our needs. So understanding our nervous system feels, and it has one function: don't die. And if these big emotions are coming up and it feels like a death, it wants to protect you from that. Yet our soul has to communicate through our nervous system and through our senses. That's why when there's not that force field and a charge, it's so light, it's so open, and we can just be in flow and everything just flows through us and it feels like a delight and there's no strain to it. Yet we understand when we're stressed and we're in fear, everything's rigid, we're second guessing things, everything feels really prickly, and it's like, okay, if that is happening, how do we come back into home? How do we work the muscle to come back into peace? And it's regulating that nervous system, holding the space to validate, you know what, we're charged right now. What are the tools to help, regulate myself, to acknowledge it? And, we live in a real world that when I'm in a meeting, all of a sudden I'm charged. I can't just walk away. Yet you can be excused and say, can I go to the bathroom for a minute? And take that moment just to breathe. Or, you're in traffic. Can you interrupt it for a minute just to come back to your breath? Because that's the one tool nobody can rob you from.
Mhm.
That's where recognize everybody wants to be here now, like Ram Dass always said, and everybody's trying to get into presence and be here. We're always in the now. It's, are you present in the now? Or are you in your mind trying to create all these scenarios to, be the predictor to avoid pain, to avoid suffering, to avoid misery? Where it's like, no, be present and recognize the capacity of your body can experience what has to be experienced with life. Some of it doesn't feel good. Like when my friend was in hospice in November and I had to watch her body stop functioning for 8 days. And just watching that, my mind spiritually knows that energy doesn't die. Yeah, my nervous system was bucking in all kinds of ways that I don't want this to happen. Like this isn't supposed to be and everything else. And holding her take her last breath gave me a life experience that no textbook or theories can walk us through. It's lived experience. So when we can hold a safe space, that's what's needed is safety. And that we can be honest and we can surrender those guards, that all the things that can come up, because you see, we create a narration to protect ourselves of who we're supposed to be. And when honesty and truth comes up, we feel a little bit like a hypocrite because
Mhm.
we're not meeting the image that we've created for ourselves. And sometimes that image is not a nice image that we've created. We've created some suffering for ourselves that we have to just be in suffering where it's like, who said? Who said you're not allowed to feel joy? Who said you have to be in burnout to show that you care? Who said that you have to suffer in such a way to have compassion?
I think the question is for a lot of people, there's just so much. The image I get is um, a beach ball being held under the water, right? Like we've
Mhm.
held so much of this stuff underwater for so long. And when it does come out, it does kind of, like you said, when you're sitting there on the couch with the two 5-year-olds, they kind of hits you in the face all at once and it's a big giant mess. But also there's just so much to be aware of. What does your work usually look like when you're starting out with someone?
So we do, like I do a discovery call just to see if we can work together because not all people are willing and it needs a willingness because where
Mhm.
I'm going to bring you is deep. It doesn't mean you're going to drown. It's just being able to acknowledge that I'm intentional of wanting to do this work. Because the one thing that unfortunately a lot of gurus or self-help or these retreats happen They make you feel like you're going to get to an arrival and everything will be okay and there's no more work to do. Where I'm bringing you of, no, you have the capacity to do the work. And the work is always coming back to joy, coming back to peace, that feeling all of your emotions and acknowledging your biology. And that can feel daunting because at the beginning, there's a lot of authentic emotions that feel dense that you didn't know how to relate to. So there is a reverse of your perception going on, and it feels like a threat to do that. It doesn't feel safe to let go of this stuff. So as we did at that mindful moment, I bring people into a space of, acknowledging the nervous system coming into their body, and let's just speak. Allow there to be an openness of what you're feeling. If you can, to put your hand on your heart right now and feel that guardedness in that nervous system. If you can come back into that.
Mm-hmm.
And just acknowledge and feel the presence of your hand on your heart and holding that cage. And just allow the presence of your hand to melt some of that cage so that your heart can feel your hand and it can be blended in together. And take a deep breath in and gently release it. And allow more space to be with that hand and that heart and to melt away that cage. And that you tell your body inside that it's safe. It's safe to feel. There may be some memories or certain little messages that are coming up, and allow them just to pass through. And honor your body. Honor your nervous system. Honor this protection. And let it know that it can melt away, that it's safe. It's safe to open up. Take another deep breath in. And go a little deeper into it, bringing softness and gentleness. And just acknowledge it. And just be there for yourself in a moment. This is what I call warrior work.
Why is that?
Because it's an internal conflict and things that are going up that we don't even know how to put into language sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And until we can start to verbally give it verbiage, we're hiding. And we don't even know how to feel safe to feel this in front of other people without feeling berated or judged or feeling the sense of, oh my gosh, my skin is on fire because of this. And I don't want anybody seeing me in this state. Where what I create is a witnessing that it's safe to feel this. Many people don't see it, yet what's important is that you can acknowledge it and you can strengthen it by having resilience that it's safe to be in the space. And that's warrior work.
Have you ever been in a nervous system that just was too stubborn?
Mine.
Tell me, what do you mean? Tell me about that.
Oh, mine is very stubborn. It bucks and it goes on and it wants to stay in the pattern that it always knew.
Yeah.
It always, and it's like, wait, especially when I'm triggered. Like these past 2 weeks, I've been triggered because I just finished doing my manuscript. So now I've sent it out to beta readers and it's like, oh my gosh, like I might get rejection or people are gonna, although everybody keeps saying like, where's your book? And you simplify things and you have such a language and I write, and I'm like, now that I'm going to put it out, they might have just been lying to me. So I feel the trigger. And then, the twins going in their last couple of weeks for high school and the exams and more triggered. And then it's like, but there's somewhere else you can be, Nat. You can soften in this. So my own nervous system gets rigid. And that's why I'm able to do the work that I do, because I allow the vulnerability that I don't have it all together. There is no all together.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these people that I see that, are very high spiritual seekers, it's like none of them are parents.
Mhm.
So some of them don't know the depths of what it is to be a parent and get supercharged by these little humans that are part of your nervous system, because nervous systems create other nervous systems. So you're seeing yourself in your son and your daughter, and they're parts that those parts I like, but those parts I don't like them and don't have them here,
Mhm.
because you're bringing up the stuff that I don't want to see about myself, because we are very hypocritical. What we see in others, we don't see that we do. It just looks a little differently.
Well, we also don't want, I think it's very natural to not want our children to hurt in the same ways that we did. And so we
Of
don't
course.
want them to make the same mistakes or get the same grooves or the same wrinkles or the same negative patterns that we had that didn't serve us. And like you said, because we don't have language around it, it's really hard for us to communicate that to them. So we end up just triggered and dismissing it. And then nobody's any better for it. Yeah.
Like I say to parents, the most difficult thing that you will have is the challenge of watching and witnessing the pain in your children and not being able to do anything about it.
Hmm.
Yet if we didn't witness them riding a bike and being scared that they were going to fall off and break every bone, they wouldn't have learned that skill.
Hmm.
Yes, there's certain things that we can navigate to avoid. Yet how many of us were told, don't touch the fire because it'll hurt? Yet our own lived body needed to know what that felt like to learn it. Pain is a teacher, yet we try to avoid it and we don't honor it in the way that it can be serving. And so sometimes we enable and we protect our children in the detriment of their growth. We have villainized pain rather than really understand it
Hmm.
and honor it and give the space of reminding our children of what resilience looks like. That we're not, there's no coming out of being a parent and that your children won't feel harm.
Hmm.
There's no coming out of being in the role of parent and that you don't make mistakes, because you're learning about yourself. So you're asleep to certain things that you're doing. And the most difficult thing when in these 11 years is waking up to seeing how I parented my first child to the twins and
Hmm.
just being like, oh my gosh. And even this month I had to feel all that. And my son was saying, and I was backing away, and he's like, why do you keep backing away? I'm like, because you're making me feel stuff that I don't want to feel about myself in this parenting role, that, certain behaviors that you have is caused because of the way that I showed up as a parent. Yet it's my responsibility to feel that and to also acknowledge it and not make him feel like there's something going on, but I must be mean. It's like, no, you are right in what you're seeing and feeling, and let me acknowledge that. So you're doing great work with your children by explaining, like, I'm feeling some things in my body right now, and I don't know how to communicate. And this
Hmm.
is what it makes me feel like inside. Yet
Hmm.
also opening up the space of listening to what their experience, because our children always wanna protect us. They always wanna
Hmm.
save us. They always wanna make us feel good, and that denies them from their own perspective of having their own emotions.
Hmm.
They get so tangled in.
And I'm thinking about even the people who don't have children. It's the same path.
Yeah,
There's a version of that younger person inside of you that all feels exactly the way that you just said about all those things. Wants
exactly.
to protect us, wants us to, all those things. And so it's about not abandoning them, whoever that
Mhm.
is, whether that's a physical child that you've brought into the world or the inner child that lives inside of you already.
Yeah,
Not abandoning ourselves.
yeah.
You said
Mm.
something a while back about nervous systems communicate with each other.
Mhm.
Beyond our words, beyond
All
how.
the time.
Okay, tell me more about that.
You've walked into a room where you know that the emotional temperature felt off,
Hmm.
yet nobody wants to acknowledge it, do they? Everything's fine. Many of us knew this when we were a child. We walked in and we knew our parents, something was going on, yet they didn't give us the ability to talk about emotions. We were just told, no, no, everything's okay. So we started doubting our nervous system and the way that it can feel emotions and frequencies, and started believing the lie that everybody was saying that, no, everything's fine. So that's where the return back of structuring and trusting our nervous system. Like, our nervous system has been communicating through this. I felt some of your emotions and you've probably felt some of mine. And especially when we were doing the heart centered of letting that silence be there and communicating. We communicate in such a profound way, yet we haven't been taught to trust this. We're called woo woo. It's
Mhm.
called that it doesn't exist. It's all in your head. Where it's like, how come sometimes we can be in sync and say the same thing at the same time? Or we're thinking the same thoughts? Or how many times have you thought of somebody and you picked up the phone and they said, how did you know I needed to hear from you? How did you know I needed to hear that? Those are nervous systems communicating with each other.
Are there playful ways for us to dip our toe back into the world of listening through that part of ourselves, or listen, what, because like when you said earlier about how, you can feel, you always thought everybody had that. I do think everybody has that. I think
You
we've
do.
just like shoved it down really deep because of all these like, what's acceptable to be a human.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering if the person listening to this going, okay, I'll take you up on this challenge, Nat. I want to play. I want to play with my nervous system. I want to listen. I want to see what's possible. I want to be curious about, can I really communicate with other? Is it not just people? Can I communicate with trees? Can I, like, where does it start? Where does it end? What are some playful ways that people could play with that?
The number one thing that I suggest to my clients, especially when they're supercharged and their nervous system has been activated, put on some music and dance.
Mm.
And it depends on what your state is in. Sometimes it has to be high state and you want to move this stuff around because it's just supercharged. Sometimes it's because you need slow music because you want to emote. Yet you're allowing the body to move the movement.
Mm.
And music is the one frequency that can elevate our state, and we forget to go in there. We forget to give ourselves permission to just dance. Dance is such an opening expression that communicates, the body gets to communicate language that our analytical mind doesn't need to, say. And so doing that dancing, that's where you can start getting in tune with your body. And even if it feels awkward, even if it feels like, oh, it's not, you can go beyond that and just allow yourself to dance. Just dance and start listening, because when you're dancing, there's little messages that are coming up. But most of us are taught to ignore those
Mhm.
things. And it's like, okay, let it come up a little bit more and trust and see certain things. And then all of a sudden, when your nature is another thing, grounding with grass, be young again, put your feet in some dirt and get messy. Take out this perfection of needing to be polished and start being with nature. Your body came from the elements of this world, of the earth, not the world that, the construct of man, the elements of what the earth is. Those are all part of our body. That's why we need certain minerals. Like people say hydrating, and it's like, it's more than that, just water. It's the minerals that we need. So allow yourself to be childlike again. Find the ways that will invigorate just laughing and being free. For some, it's like, go hug a tree. Yeah, okay. For some, that will feel awkward for them. So go sit by the stream of a water or go and run. Some people need that runner's high and be able to be in their body in that way. Yet find the ways that you can be outdoors and be with the sun, be with the air, be with the elements of this earth so that you can connect into that and that you can be in that deeper frequency of trusting and knowing that you're being held and that you don't have to control everything.
Mm.
There's a bigger force that you're connected into that you can be that vessel to communicate through. And then all of a sudden, when all it's like, oh, something happened and I see this, to act on it. It might not be the right thing yet. If you don't fire, you don't know where your aim is.
Mhm.
So allow there to be the awkwardness with those that you feel that can trust. Like you can ask somebody, I'm just going to play and be a little bit of a mad scientist and see if this works with myself. So I may call or I may do something and just let me know if it resonates or not. And find those safe spaces that you can start trusting your intuition,
Mhm.
letting your nervous system communicate, and knowing that in every interaction, there's a teacher and a student. So something that you may think that, oh, I don't have anything to offer, you actually do.
Mm.
The energy of your life force is much more profound than you allow it to be. Although the world has told you it doesn't have any value, it doesn't have any worth, That's hogwash. You're alive for a reason, and your frequency brings a light like nobody else. It's a simple fingerprint. And I know this might feel a little, like you said, naive or um, like I'm trying to give you a gold star, and I'm not. If you really tap in and if you really allow yourself to feel the magnitude of your life force, to feel the magnitude of your breath, that will guide you into a power that you have forgotten to tap into. You're trying to go on the outside, and the outside doesn't have your safety. It's within your body, and it's to return home into that part. But you've been trying to seek safety on the outside of you, which the return home is the warrior work, to start trusting yourself and recognizing time is currency. And it's how are you spending that currency? Yes, we have jobs, we have responsibilities that, unfortunately, this world has been anchored of economy and this and that. Yet you can take a moment to ask yourself, how am I going to show up? Even with the frustration, the daunting and everything, I remember that I have the power of changing my internal state, not in a bypass of acknowledging like this is shitty right now. Yet, how do I want to show up? Because I may be missing out on the delight of connecting with some glimmer in someone's eyes or hearing a laughter or hearing somebody thank me because of just my presence. Or I'm able to thank somebody else for lifting up my spirits and acknowledging my being. These are the little small things that you can do that create the glimmers. And the more that you build on that, the more that you see that there's a frequency that you forgot to navigate in.
And I think that's the thing that I think I find the most tension in, and it's like tragic or painful. I don't know quite the word for it, but it's to just watch myself. I mean, I do it less and less now. I'm so grateful that I'm much more present now. Um, but to just witness so many people miss so many moments because they're trying to be a certain way or project a certain, acceptable personality or whatever it is. And the freedom and the delight that truly can come from the tiniest little thing. That isn't just some saying that the Buddha said and it sounded good, or that Rumi said, thousands of years ago. That is true. That you can cultivate a level of presence for yourself. And I think, like you acknowledged before, that comes and goes. Like it's not like you arrive at this place where you're like, I now am completely present and every blade of grass delights me. Like that's not what we're aiming for.
No.
And most of us could never achieve it anyway because we have children.
Yeah. Like, and
Um,
sometimes when life is life and you don't want to hear that shit.
yeah,
Don't talk to me about no spiritual
yeah,
philosophy. I'm going through my emotions and I'm in my stuff, and just let me be. And there's times where I'm in my stuff. Like I
yeah.
just said, I was in hospice with my friend and having to go through that. I'm very thankful for the tools and the way that I've shown up, and that I have language now that I can show what's possible. Yet there were very moments like, I don't want to even do any of this work. I just want to be in a puddle and cry. And I allowed myself to
Mm-hmm.
do that. Yet I leaned into allowing myself to feel all of the feels,
Mm-hmm.
not be in a spiritual bypass of, oh, I'm above this and nothing's really real
Mm-hmm.
and everything is energy. And it's like, well, where's my human
Mm-hmm.
experience and where's my compassion for those that don't have the tools? I'm going to treat them like, oh, you're emoting and you're going through suffering and there's no reason for it.
Mm-hmm.
This is the human experience.
Mm-hmm. So for somebody who's like, okay, I want to embark on a path where I'm maybe going a little bit deeper than I have before in exploring some of this stuff and opening, it feels like a channel to me, opening this channel to this, or portal maybe is a better word, because it does feel like another, there's energy moving through, but it does actually feel like another dimension that's also right here. So for somebody who's wanting to do more of that work, you've mentioned your manuscript. Maybe tell us a little bit about your book, and then maybe tell us a little bit about how somebody might work with you to go into some of this stuff.
Yeah. So the book that I just finished writing is called The Gift Wrapped in Sandpaper: Untamed Power. So I explain the nervous system. I give it a visual of that stallion. I explain, the things that I went through, and was very vulnerable in certain chapters, and give somatic practices, and meet the person. So reading the book, I give warnings too, because your nervous system will get activated in certain stories that I give. Yet I brought it into such a simple language, and that there's integration. It's not just somatic and just the body, and it's not just spiritual and forgetting the body. It's integrating both, so that you can, be alive, and be able to experience the delight of your life. Even when, the environment doesn't change, yet the way that you show up in the environment is different. And I would have never wanted to go get the lesions in my brain and go through all that pain and suffering physically. Yet there was such a gift in it, and I needed that sandpaper to polish it off for me to understand what the gift was.
Yeah.
So that's why I titled it that way. My website is called liftoneself.com. So that's liftoneself.com. And the reason why I called it Lift Oneself, because it's lifting that ego, the defense mechanisms of that nervous system, to be in that oneself. And once you're in that one self, you're connected, and you feel the vibration of all, and it feels such an opening, and you feel safe to be in your body and not be so triggered by trying to avoid pain. The work that I do with clients is over Zoom. I do some in-persons in Ottawa, which I called Give Yourself Space, where I guide people into meditation and in their body so that they can release. The one-on-one sessions that I call Return to Home is the return is like we were doing with the mindful meditation. How I guided you, I bring people even more profoundly in there so that they can be vulnerable and start releasing these charges and better understand what's going on internally. I also have a workshop that's called Emotional Sobriety, which is a much more discounted price than the one-on-one returns. Yet it gives you the opening of understanding your nervous system, understanding what patterns in, and brings them into a deeper meditation of interacting with that nervous system and being able to engage. So, opening up that portal within themselves. Because a lot of people think the portal is outside of themselves, where it's like, no, you're opening the portal back into your body,
Hmm.
so that that's where your spirit is housed, in that nervous system, and it's just guarding it with this force field.
Hmm.
Yet integrate the two, not be one or the other. So those are, and I also have a podcast, and I'd love for you, Kate, to be on my podcast. It's called Lift
Oh,
Oneself also.
I would love that.
Yeah, and I create conversations to bring different modalities and different conversations where people can see themselves and can see that there's different ways to come into yourself. There's different modalities. Like one time you might be using this, and you've reached a plateau. So there's something else that you need to go into. There's not just one method of, finding a way to engage with your nervous system. Cause that's the thing. Your nervous system's always listening. So it's like, how do I use the language to create that safety and to engage with its force? Because our
Hmm.
nervous system is super powerful. And when
Hmm.
it's charged, we know how it feels and how we can be. So it's like, okay, how can I face this, rather than running away or suppressing or trying to act like it's not there and being something other than what I want to be? It's like, how can I honor my humanity in this?
And I love that you've used the Mustang because I've often thought about that. There was a clip I heard, I think it was like Jerry Seinfeld talking to a bunch of like powerhouse stand-up comedians, and they were talking about
Yeah.
creativity, just like this channel of like this ideas, and it's almost not from you, what
Yeah.
at that
Yeah.
level, like Bob Dylan or John Lennon. Like when you think about the big people who've had big channels of creativity running through them, and this guy was talking, I think it was Jerry Seinfeld, was talking about how it is a lot like learning how to ride that horse rather than trying to pull the horse around. You do have to partner with it. Thank you for doing the work that you do in the world. I think it's so important. And we're at a time in our own evolution of humanity that I'm actually quite excited for. but I acknowledge that it is a time of a lot of destruction and chaos and confusion. And I'm so grateful that there are people like you out there guiding people back home
Mhm.
so that they can express more of themselves, so that humanity can open into our own collective next shared thing, which I think is going to be really beautiful.
Yeah, it
And I'm
is.
really excited about being part of that. I feel almost like we're midwives bringing
Yeah,
this thing in.
exactly.
Yeah, it's an honor, and it's an honor to meet somebody else along on that,
Thank you.
on that. I feel like we're a team,
Where?
like we're the squad that's been tapped by something going, "Hey
The
guys,
tribe.
we need you." Yeah,
Exactly.
it
Yeah,
feels, yeah. I don't use the word sacred
so
often because I do feel like it's overused in not always the right ways, but I do feel like this is sacred work, and
it is.
it's an honor to meet you and to be on the path with you.
I'm thankful you listened to the call. I reached out and, you could have denied it because you don't know who I am. Yet you listened to the tug. And when we listen to that little tug, it opens up so much. And then we're reaffirmed that we're on the path because it can be lonely at times.
Yeah.
When you're trying to speak something and everybody else like, no, no, that doesn't. And you're a visionary of things that people haven't reached to. It's like Moses or it's like Noah.
Yeah.
We can go into those or like, the Buddha or any kind that there's a visionary and we're speaking something, but everybody else is saying, no, that
Hmm.
doesn't exist. It won't work. And then when they finally come, it's like, oh, it's good that I trusted myself and there's more tribe we can reunite. And as you said, midwife, I label myself as a doula. I'm
Mm.
very good with death. And so death is life.
Hmm.
Yet we just see that it's a final and we don't even know how to have language around that, which if we were to have language around that, people wouldn't be so triggered and want to shut things off that they could have dialogues and feel their emotions around it and everything else and better interact with that energy of understanding what life is and what that death is and everything else. So it's an honor.
Mm.
Again, thank you for
Mm.
creating the safe space that you do and engaging people to trust themselves and to bring that creativity out that it's so necessary in a world that's trying to damper it. Those that are standing in their power, we're seeing that it's more and more that we're being supported by, the ethers, God, universe, whatever, Allah, whatever name you
Yeah.
call our creator, our divinity, that it is supporting it now, that it's okay to be sensitive. It's okay to be empathetic and have resilience and strength in that, not be, killed and hushed and shut down.
It feels like it's what's being called for.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, one of the reasons I'm so grateful to have others around is, I'm glad you named that it's lonely work. I think a lot of listeners today listening to this today can feel that, it does, you're a pioneer. You're, you're having to face and navigate uncertainty and confront the unknown in enormous ways. And we're doing it within the context of our own healing path. We're, while we're healing our own stuff, we're imperfect humans as we're going. But it does feel like a wave that's building. Okay, I have two more things. Sorry, I got carried away in that little moment too. I you probably heard, or maybe not. I don't mention it every episode, but I do. I have this. It's a little wooden carved bowl that I bought at a little farmer's market years ago. And in my very first episode, I had this nudge to get my little angel card deck and pull a word for that as a blessing for the show. So usually before I get on with somebody, I'll sit down for just a second and say something along the lines of, let me, small Kate, get out of the way so that what needs to be said can be said and what needs to be heard can be heard by both our sort of souls and spirits and also the listeners. And then may this conversation be in service
Yeah.
to our collective awakening in our opening. And then I'll often pick a card as a kind of a blessing for the show. But my nudge today was actually to pick the card with you.
Oh,
So we can pick the card together right now.
yes.
Do you
I
want to
love this.
tell me when to pick it?
Now.
Okay. Oh, it's stuck to my finger. Ooh, sisterhood and brotherhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what we're creating, the
Yeah.
collective.
Yeah.
Remember that we're all walking each other home
Yeah.
and we're not supposed to do it independent. We're supposed to be interdependent. Humanity cannot thrive by just one person. It's to remember that we're all connected. We're all human beings that came from one species. Yet we have been indoctrinated to be in this independence. And it's to come back into the villages and the collectiveness. Doesn't mean everybody gets along, yet we can have silos for the islands, not everybody just on their own island. We can come visit and, be able to do the innovation, to adapt and evolve.
Mm-hmm.
I love this. Thank you.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Okay. One more question. It's
Yeah.
the final one. This is the billboard question.
Okay.
And I ask this at the end of every show. We talked today about a lot of the limiting beliefs that we inherit, that are in the collective ether, that we internalize, and that really keep us still and small.
Mhm.
A lot of them are not even things that we're conscious of, but they are, we've all felt them. And they keep us from shining our light. They keep us from accessing this thing that's behind the force field. So the billboard question is the idea that you have this magical billboard, and for the people who are, there's people who are ready for your message. And when they read it, whatever you've said, whatever you've put on this billboard, it's going to be like this magic that will drop into their heart and bloom and help them step over the threshold of the place that they're in right now, away from some of those limiting beliefs and toward this freer, truer expression of their creativity. What would you put on that billboard?
Remember to be kind to yourself.
Thank you so much for coming today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. And thank you again, like I said, for creating the safe space for everybody.
It's my honor. Thank you.